Hello, everybody. I'm Derek Arden, and welcome to Monday Night Live, the live and uncut podcast where I have some fantastic speakers on and we discuss issues of leadership, negotiation, and even money. Tonight, I've got Simon Zutchi on, who's a very successful entrepreneur. I first met Simon in Phoenix, Arizona in 2004 when we were both attending the Professional Speaking Association convention. In fact, I think we were the only two Brits at the conference, but we were seeking out the very best people, and we have one or two stories about that when we met a very drunk Jack Canfield in the lift and asked him how he wrote his books. If I read Simon's CV, we'd be here all night, which I think might be the plan actually, rather than me interview him. But his very impressive CV includes setting up the Property Investors Network in 2003, the Property Mastermind Group in 2007. His book, Property Magic, has sold 100,000 copies, and he founded the Crowd Property Investors in a peer lending platform, which has lent £454 million and built 3,864 homes. I better get that right. Simon sold his business via an IPO on the New York Stock Exchange for over 8 figures in 2022, but still runs it. Welcome, Simon. Simon has a great sense of humor, and so much so we're still friends despite my banking career, when I told Simon I wouldn't have lent him a penny if I was in the bank. I'd recommend him to go and see NatWest. Simon, welcome, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Derek. My pleasure. And I'm very happy we've had over 20 years of banter together. Always great to have a chat with you, Derek. And hopefully we can share some of the stories and useful things that people might get from the interview today.
Absolutely, Simon. Tell us about your story from being a Cadbury's graduate and resigning from the management training program.
Well, yeah, when I come from a very kind of a middle class background. My dad was a GP, brought up in Kent, came up to Birmingham for my degree, manufacturing, engineering, and business studies. And when I finished in '94, I didn't actually have a job, so a bit of a depressing time really. It wasn't a good time to do engineering. And after getting some telesales jobs just to show I was employable and to get some income in, because my parents are retired to the south of France, very nice, but you can't really apply for jobs from there. Finally got a job at Cadbury's, my dream job at Cadbury's as a graduate trainee in manufacturing. So I got to move around the whole business, did everything pretty much apart from sales, and loved Cadbury's, loved the people, I love the product, love the company. But I started investing in property in '95 when I got my first job, and I rented out 2 of the rooms to my friends who were still at Birmingham University, and I kind of lived for free. And so I've always been an entrepreneur. I had a nightclub business, promotion business when I was at university and when I was still at Cadbury's, and I started to buy some more houses because I was saving salary because I was living for free because of my tenants. I had great income from my business, so started buying more properties. And by 2001, when I'd finished a graduate program, I was a senior manager, and my last role at Cadbury's was internet marketing for a year. I realised I quite like my independence. I like my freedom. Cadbury's was great, but I just didn't get enough holiday. So I had enough income, not enough to replace my income, but enough to cover my expenses. So I made the wise or maybe stupid decision, and many of my bosses and my peers thought I was crazy leaving a good job like Cadbury's in 2001. And I then spent a couple of years just messing around, really, did a bit of property, a bit of club stuff. And by 2003, so after 8 years, I completely replaced my income. And it's
Now, I
about
know
that time.
you were a big fan of Tony Robbins. I was a fan of his.
Absolutely, yeah. So
And
I think I went to my first actual Tony Robbins event in the year 2000. I'm sure many people here have done some Tony Robbins stuff. It was Unleash the Power Within, where you get to walk on hot coals, 5,000 people in a big arena. Amazing. You read all the books, listened to all the audio programs and Nightingale Conants. I learned there about the importance of environment and getting people around you. You become like the people around you, and if you want to become successful, you can't just go. If you want to be a bodybuilder, you can't go to the gym once. You got to keep going. And so in 2003, I felt quite lonely, and there was a group called the Yes Group, which is kind of like a personal development group. There's one in London, I think Manchester, and I was involved in one in Birmingham. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could go to a meeting like this? And this was all about personal development in the Yes Group. Wouldn't it be great if there was a meeting about property? So I went online and there was nothing at all. So I set up the very first networking anywhere in the UK just for property investors. Most people fairly new, some experienced ones. And I really wanted to, for my own self-interest, I wanted to meet other people like me because all my friends were still working. My family had their own homes. They didn't have investments really. And, you know, when you get to a certain level of success, there's only a certain number of people you can speak to who get it and understand it. So that's why I set up PIN. And at those events, people would ask me, how come I didn't have to work? And I started explaining what I'd done. I then started training. And when I met Will and a few other speakers here, I wasn't speaking about property. You know, in fact, most speakers, I started going to the speaker association because I thought that's a good skill to have. And at those, I was investing in property. I wasn't working anymore, but people said, what do you do? And I said, well, I do a bit of magic. That was one of my hobbies. And I was, you know, doing close-up magic at student balls and things. And so I started to teach speakers how to put magic into their presentations. And that's kind of how I got into the PSA. And then I started speaking about property. And I've been speaking about property for the last 22 years. Despite selling my training and networking business in 22, part of an earn out was to stay on as a CEO. And actually, I love it. I get paid to do what I love to do. I don't have to do much of the management stuff anymore, which is great. So I'm still teaching people about investing. I still absolutely love investing. We have very different views about gearing and borrowing, and that's fine. But you know what? I've seen so many people completely change their lives through the income that comes in. And if you look at the Times Rich list, the top 1,000 people, I would say a good 2/3 of those have either made their money in property or they've put the money from their business into property, and that's the long-term wealth generation. And yeah, things are changing now, and I know we weren't going to talk too much about property today, maybe some other things instead, but market's changing. So many landlords are selling and getting out because of the Renters' Rights Act, and interest rates are higher now than they have been for the last decade or so. Well, they've come down a bit last couple of years. It's not as good as it maybe used to be, but when lots of people are, I'm a contrarian investor. You know, I believe in, I think it was Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, who said that, you know, you should get scared. What did he say?
He said basically you should invest when the market is at the lowest.
You do the opposite. Point. So when everyone's investing, that's not the right time. When everyone's running for the hills, that's the time to get greedy, basically.
But Simon, hang on a minute. All these regulations that have come in, all the extra stamp duty, it's not a time to invest in property, surely.
Well, Derek, that's what everyone thinks, which is why so many people are selling. And so as long as you know what you're doing, and yes, we've got to pay the extra. When the first stamp duty increase came in, I think 2016, I think the Conservative government put, and it was extra 3%. Many people in my community say, oh, we can't buy property, it doesn't work anymore, an extra 3% doesn't work. Guess what? We just adapted. We started buying properties at a lower price. So we factor it in. Now we've got to pay the extra 5% stamp duty. And this government really is trying to put everyone off being a landlord. And it's going to backfire because landlords leaving, you're going to get big corporations like BlackRock, Lloyds Bank are buying up loads of property. And think about this for the tenants. When there's a problem, and I have letting agents management, I don't speak to tenants. I can't think of anything worse than that. So people do it for me. But if a tenant has a problem and they call the letting agent, you know, I like to think we're a good landlord. We look after the properties, look after the tenants, and we're sympathetic. You know, sometimes people have issues. You know, they can't pay the full rent. We'll be flexible. When you've got BlackRock as your landlord and you call and you've got a problem, computer says no, and you're going to be out. And actually, it's going to be tenants that are going to suffer. Rents are going to go up. So I'm all in favour of legislation. I'm all in favour of levelling up and improving standards. And that's what the Conservative government were trying to do with the Renters Reform Bill. But the Labour Party have just taken it, Labour government have taken it way too far. And there's going to be lots of issues. So no longer can anyone be a hobbyist amateur landlord. You don't have to do it full time, but if you have property, you need to be professional. You need to understand the regulations. And as long as you're doing things correctly, you should be okay. But there will be definitely an increase in these no fee, no win solicitors who are trying to get tenants to take their landlords to court. They've got 2 years rent repayment orders. If you haven't, Rachel Reeves had this problem when she moved to number 11. She started renting out her property, and she should have got a selective license in that particular area. The councils use this as a way of just making more money. They say, oh, these properties need to be licensed, and she didn't have a license. And technically, her tenants can take her to court and get claim back 12 months of rent. And from May the 1st, it will be 2 years of rent they can claim. Now, of course, we need to do things correctly, and not that I want to be sympathetic to Rachel Reeves, but actually the tenants had no discomfort, no harm, no detriment to them being able to live in the property just because she hadn't got the license, and that was something she should have done, absolutely, but it's a council money-raising activity. But because of that, indiscretion, she could be forced to pay up to 12 months rent back. So it's these kind of things that are going to catch landlords who aren't educated, who are unaware, that's going to cause a problem. And unfortunately, it's going to be tense. And I tell you what, landlords are going to be far more careful who they take on as tenants, which means some people who are a bit more vulnerable might really struggle to find rent.
So Simon, just to summarize this, I had a couple of properties. I sold them. The hassle was too much for me. Luckily, I sold them a bit ahead of the game. But you said I was an amateur investor in it, and the hassle, the regulation, understanding the law. I don't want to break the law.
Absolutely.
It's too much.
It's a bit of a minefield now. But as long as you understand it, and if you want to get educated, Derek, come and speak so I can help you with that. But as long as you understand it and you do the things you need to do, you should be okay.
But that's pretty much if you've got a busy full-time job, that's probably too much, isn't it? There's a danger of overwhelm there, I would have thought.
Yeah, I mean, you can get letting agents to do it for you. You are still ultimately responsible. And I had one of my properties, I've got a block that's got 13 flats in up in the northeast. We've got a letting agent to go after it. And today, my lettings manager sent, I have someone who works with all my letting agents, basically. She looks after my Birmingham properties and coordinates all of them. And sent me a picture of this guy's moved out. The property's full of bags of rubbish. I'm going to have to spend a lot of money fixing it. And the letting agent, we're saying to the agent, hang on a minute, if you were inspecting every 3 months, that would never have happened. How has it got to this state? So unfortunately, not all letting agents are as good as they should be. And that's part of the problem as well. But having said all that, what you need to remember is we live on an island, and there's a limited amount of accommodation in the UK, and we have a growing population. And so there will always be a demand for accommodation, good accommodation. And long-term rents and values go up. Values obviously go up and they come down. They've come down the last couple of years, and London's having a bit of a crash at the moment. But if you're prepared to hold long-term, I don't think there's anything better in terms of long-term wealth creation, as long as you know how to do it properly.
And so just summarize how you do it properly.
So you need to understand the new regulations coming in. There's lots of information about that. I'm actually writing a new book about that. Hopefully be out in early March. You've got to understand what you need to do. Pick your tenants very carefully. Make sure they're being vetted. It's going to take a bit longer to get tenants out. We can't use Section 21s, which was the no-fault eviction anymore from 1st of May. But we can use Section 8 still. But we need to be careful who we take on. Get rent guarantee insurance in case they're not paying. So you get paid your rent still while you're trying to get them out of the property. Make sure your letting agents are fully up to speed, knowing what they need to do. That when someone moves in, they're giving the correct prescribed information. You're having the various licensing, the things you need. So there's a checklist, things you need to do. But if you do those, you should be okay.
Wow. It sounds too complicated for a simple man like me, Simon.
Well, you're retired, Derek. You don't need a hassle, maybe. I get that. You're very wealthy anyway from your incredibly well-paid job and your ridiculously well-paid speaking gigs you get as well. So maybe you don't need to do that. But I've seen so many normal people who've had jobs 9 to 5 and they've just bought a few properties, and those properties, when they've retired and had that massive dip in income, which is what happens to most people, they've had a very nice pension coming through, thank you very much. They've had capital appreciation and they've been able to pass legacy on to the kids. That's a great scenario, right? Most people, when they finish work, I know we have a group of esteemed gentlemen and ladies here who are probably more financially aware than most people. But most people, when they retire, they're broke. They don't have any money. They have
Mm.
a massive reduction in their income. They die poor. There's nothing worse than that. You worked hard all your life. Surely you want to enjoy your retirement, and you need a bit of money to do that. So that's why I believe investing in property is one of the best things you can do.
When I spoke for you in October at your Property Investors Network, I noticed some of the people were there just for the inspiration, just for the motivation, just for the group.
Yes.
And of course, that comes out of what you learnt from the Speaking Association and from people like Tony Robbins and Jack
Yep.
Canfield, who was the guy we met in the lift at Chicken Soup. And you asked him, Jack, how did you write Chicken Soup for the Soul? And he said, Mark Victor Hansen and I had 6 bottles of wine, and we came up with the answer, with the title of the book. And with that, he fell over, and we dragged him out the lift.
And we thought he was about to write a few more books, the condition he was in.
Absolutely. And but you were a passionate student of leadership, self-development books.
Absolutely. I still continue to invest. And that's, I'm sure people are here because they want to learn, right? They want to pick up hints and tips and things. And the most successful people I know are always looking to further their knowledge, to get better at what they do, to increase their skills. There's a great, so one of the things I've done for many years was, there's a guy called Joe Polish. Really amazing guy, great connector, probably one of the most connected people in the world. He runs something called Genius Network, 25K Club, 100K Club. And it's basically an organization in America, in Phoenix, where he's based. And you go there 3 times a year. You have a group of about 50, 60 people. And you get to 3 events a year. And it's just business owners, successful people. The price tag cuts out the time wasters. And it's just sharing, not just business, but also life. Joe's a former recovering drug addict, and he's big on recovery and charity and things. And he says that most of us are probably addicted. We all have addictions, and many of us it may be workaholics. I'm definitely a workaholic. And in that group, one of the concepts they talk about is this idea of if you had $1 million racehorse that would obviously run races and win money, and then when it gets old, you put it out to stud, etc. That $1 million race, you would look after that racehorse. You would give it the best stables to make sure it got great sleep. You'd pay for the best vets. You'd have the best trainer. You'd give it the best food. You would look after that racehorse. And the analogy is that actually, you are your own racehorse. Your ability to earn money at whatever age you are, your ability to earn money is an asset that you have. And why wouldn't you look after your body and your mental health and invest in yourself and learn more and get better and become a faster racehorse, a better racehorse? And that's how I see investing in yourself. And Derek, you and I, for many, many years, there was and maybe a small group of speakers who would go from the PSA over to the NSA annual convention. And I love PSA. I've gained so much from it just by seeing other speakers, but it's very small compared to the NSA events, which are just.
And for those of you that are watching this, PSA is the Professional Speaking Association in the UK, which I was the chair of, and NSA is the National Speakers Association, which is in America, which is 10 times the size, the original organization. And people like Patricia Fripp and Carl Walsh, who we know, are members of that.
Absolutely. And, it's time and effort to go over to those events. And, we always make a bit of a holiday when we go over as well. But I'm prepared to make those kind of investments. And I've spent, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds on my education, on mentoring, on masterminds and groups. But I think that's why I've been successful, because I've learned from other people. I've not have to reinvent the wheel. I've copied and pasted. I've learned. I've adapted. I've put my own spin on things. And absolutely, everything I learn, I tweak it, adjust it, and I share it with my students. And when I teach anything, property investing, whatever, it's the knowledge, the strategies are important. But I know many people who know what to do, but they fail to take action because fear is holding them back. Motivation. So that's why we put so much personal development into the training that we've done for the last 22 years.
Yeah, I noticed it. I sat at the back for the whole of the session. I wasn't speaking till the afternoon, and I noticed that the one thing that came out, Simon, they were all you were pinning them down, asking questions. Everybody asked questions, but they hadn't taken action.
Yeah.
About 75% of them had committed the month before to take action on things, and they hadn't done it.
So we
And you
were holding
asked,
them to account. Why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? Because sometimes we know what to do. There's a difference between knowing and doing, right?
absolutely.
And we need someone external. So, and by the way, I mean, I put out loads of free content on my YouTube channel and stuff like that. But my 30,000 subscribers on YouTube, guess what? They're not all financially independent. You know why? Because the information's free. And some of the very same stuff I put out on my YouTube for free, I teach people in my £25,000 mastermind program. But guess what? When people pay £25,000, you can bet they're listening better, they're taking notes, and they're more likely to actually implement and take action. Because when things are free, people don't value it. Some people do. And I've had people who just read my book and they've not done anything else for me. They've gone up, built a portfolio, replaced their income, and I'm very, very happy for them because of that. And that's what makes me, really get out of bed, right? But when people have paid for stuff, they pay more attention. And, our mutual friend from not just PSA, I think it was CDN, I think it's some other CDN members in Consultant Development Network, Peter Thompson, was always saying, put your prices up, because otherwise, clients don't really appreciate you. And you might have slightly less clients, but the ones you have are going to be better. You'll get paid more and you work less. Great advice from Peter. And actually, it was Peter nagging me at the CDN, accountability for me, that finally got my book published. And writing my book, Property Magic, was the best thing I've ever done. Over 100,000 copies in circulation. You don't make a lot of money by writing a book, by the way. But if it's a good book and people then look you up or you've got some lead magnets in there, they then come and become customers. I've made millions and millions and millions of pounds from that book.
It's really extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, that was the first book I ever wrote, which is really a brochure, but it got me onto the book writing, and I did what you did and everybody else. We put it off and we put it off, and then
Yeah,
suddenly
until we had some accountability and finally we did it. And
the
actually, I
penny
got
dropped, didn't it?
so Peter encouraged me with, I got Midi Given Client. I want to give her a shout out to her. We know through the PSA. She was a book coach and I worked with her. And actually, in fact, I did a trade. She coached me on writing my book. I coached her on running mastermind programs. But because I had invested time with her and I had a deadline, by the way, deadlines are so powerful. Deadlines get things done. And, we're all busy, right? And I say to my students, we all have businesses, we've got jobs, whatever going on, but it's about understanding what do we really want in life? And if we really want something, we have a reason why we want that, we will find the time to do anything. It's all about priorities.
Oh, I heard you telling about 5 people on your mastermind group. That I do find it quite extraordinary that we share in our books everything we know, and it can
Yeah,
be bought online for £12. But
absolutely.
people would prefer to go on your £25,000 mastermind program to learn the same thing.
Yeah.
What is that all about? But it's
Well, I
interesting, isn't
guess
it?
I guess part of it is, and by the way, we have courses at £1,000 and £3,000. So people sometimes come and do something, they check us out, and no one can call my office. Well, it's not mine. No one can call the office and say, "I'd like to pay 25K to join." We say, "No, we can't take your money." We want them to come on a 3-day course where we teach them all the strategies. They can go and do it themselves. And if they like us, and importantly, if we like them, we then invite them to come and do the year-long program. There aren't
Isn't that
many
called
people.
isn't that called multi-level marketing or something like that, Simon?
Well, I don't think so, but I think that the whole idea is when people have paid that amount of money, we have a small group of people. I don't want anyone in that group who's not a learner, who can't take coaching, who's not going to listen to the advice
Yeah,
because
no, I totally agree.
we had
Yeah.
such great results. We want to make sure that we get the right people. So there are a few people who we said, you know what, actually, we don't think we can help you. We send them off to our competitors.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get that totally. Well, we're nearly at the end of the session. I just want to talk about the Hilton Hotel in Birmingham. So I attended Simon's magic, as I said before, to learn 1 or 2 magic tricks. And Simon did this great trick where things disappear, and then he sets fire to them. And he
I
set
think it was,
fire
I think it was a £10 note we rip up and we burn
£10
it,
note,
and then it
yes.
appears somewhere else, I think.
Set fire to it, and the smoke alarms went off all over the hotel because of it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
happened once or twice. Yeah.
yeah, and there was all hell let loose. And of course, I couldn't attend the the whole, because Arsenal were at home that afternoon, so I had to leave early to go to the match.
I
But
think you probably set the alarms off, then just disappeared and did a
I
run.
would
That's
have
what I
done,
think it probably
Simon, if I
was,
could have
Derek.
done. Yeah, Simon, I think you've got a little magic trick for
I've
us.
got a very, very quick magic trick. I'm not sure if you can see this or not. So this is a trick that I used to teach on that training, and I did some consultancy with a big restaurant chain, and they wanted to teach their waiters something so that they could, if there was a problem in the kitchen, they could go out, do some magic, and make an excuse. So this is the routine I taught them. So I've got 3 pieces of spaghetti in the kitchen. There's a bit of delay. Sorry, the nightmare. The chef's had a bit of a nightmare because he's got this medium-sized pasta, these small bits of pasta, and he's got these really long bits of pasta. And really, they should all be this medium length. So there's a bit of delay, unfortunately, in the kitchen because what's happened? Someone has ordered the wrong sizes, all got mixed up, and unfortunately, it's taking a bit longer to sort your order out. But don't worry, the chef's really, really good. And so what he's going to do is going to put it all into a pot like this, and he puts on the magic. Is a delicious sauce. He puts some magic ingredients, and what that means is all 3 pieces of pasta will become the same length. And that's why there's a bit of delay in the kitchen. Sorry about that. But ultimately, remember, we have got this problem where we've got some short bits of pasta, some medium bits of pasta, and some long bits of pasta. So sorry about the delay. The food will be out really, really soon.
That was brilliant, Simon.
There we
Yeah.
go. And by the way, so when you do magic, just as a speaker thing, you should never do magic just as, like you shouldn't just tell a joke just for the sake of doing magic. You need to do a story that you could demonstrate and illustrate with a prop, and then there's a point to it after. So when I went to work when I did some consultancy for that restaurant chain, there was a delay in the kitchen, and here's why the delay is, and there you go. So it was entertaining as well as making a bit of an excuse. And most people are like, oh, okay, that's not a problem that our food's really late. Instead of having to comp people and take money off, it was a great way for them to save money and keep their customers happy. So if you use something like that, always make sure it's relevant. And interestingly, when I talk about property, I don't actually do much magic because sometimes it's so hard for people to understand and believe how powerful property can be. If I did magic, they might think, oh, that's just a magic trick. And I name my book Property Magic because I think magic is similar to property. If you know how to do property, it's quite straightforward. If you don't, it's like, oh, how does that all work? And all these tenant things I need to understand. A bit like magic. When you know the secret, it's actually very, very straightforward. But if you don't, it's, oh my God, how does that happen? So that's the analogy between property and property magic, which is why I named the book that way.
And you never ever show them how the trick was done.
You never tell the secret because magic is quite simple. And if you tell the secret, it shatters the illusion. So, you should. Although with YouTube these days, lots of people expose magic tricks. I don't know why they do that. It's a bit of a shame, really. But hey, that's the way it goes.
But at the end of the day, even if they expose it, most people still don't get it, do they?
No, exactly. And also, this particular trick is one that was in many, many, many kids' magic tricks. It's like tiny pieces of string, but when you have slightly better props, people don't recognise it. And if you dress it up around, it's all about the presentation, right? If you present things correctly, people don't really spot similarities.
But that's the real takeaway from everything. It's about the presentation, isn't it? It's about
everything.
How you put it
Maybe you're doing
across.
talking to people, where your business, your marketing. It's all about presentation, all about perception as well.
And are you still telling people to go and see them face to face rather than do what people do, trying to negotiate by emails for the whole of their lives?
Definitely. So if you're, I think a final tip that will help any business owner. Property is a people business, as most businesses are. And when COVID came, everyone advanced and got onto Zoom and things like this and got used to phoning people. And I think they forgot that property is a people business. So I tell my students, if you're going to try and find a deal, don't just call an agent, go and visit the estate agent and build a rapport with them. Likewise, if you want to buy a property from a motivated seller, go and see them and build that relationship and really find out what the problem is so we can come up with an ethical win-win solution. And if you help someone overcome their problem, you might pay tens of thousands of pounds less for the property and they're really happy with it because you solved their problem. That's more important. Now, only 5% of sellers are really motivated. Most people want to get the full price and are happy to hang on, and that's fine. But right now, there are so many people selling, and many of those are landlords. When you know what you're doing, and if you're holding long term, I think there's nothing better to do than property.
And Simon, what do you mean by a motivated seller, just for the
So a
un?
motivated seller, there's someone who's got a problem. Maybe they're relocating for work, or maybe they're. So one of my clients last week, he just bought a property at a huge discount. There was an elderly gentleman who owned it, and him and his daughter, they were working with them. He's not incredibly well. He's 85. He wants to move up north to live with his daughter for the rest of his life. They had a property. It was on the market. It was on the market for 325. Wasn't worth that much. They reduced it to 300. Reduced it down to 275. They'd sold it before a few months before. Then on the 15th of December, the sale fell through. And he had already planned to move. He's got this dream house lined up, which he has to buy in January. So called my student, who went around the very next day. My student spent 2 hours with him, building a relationship, etc. Find out how much he actually needed. He didn't need that much. He had bought the property years and years ago. And he said, and here's a great question to ask people: what do you want? What's most important to you? Because we often make assumptions what people want, and that's in life and business. So ask people, what do you want? And he said, look, if you can sell, and he had, by the way, he had a couple other people who had offered, someone offered 240 and 225, but they just nipped in, looked around the house, said, we give this low price, and they hadn't built a relationship. Whereas Steve, my client, who did our mastermind like 18 years ago and still investing now, he sat down and he knew how much the owner wanted and said, look, if I can give you this amount, would you be able to? If you can do it in the time scale, that was the most important thing. Do it in the time scale, and it was still more than he had bought it for years and years ago. He said, I'll be happy to do that. He bought the property for 195,000. And the guy is absolutely delighted because he's got what he wants. He's got his dream home. Otherwise, he would have lost his dream home. He's still got extra money in the bank, bought that cash. As far as he's really happy. And Steve saved probably £100,000 on that price. Now, that doesn't happen all the time, but that just goes to show the kind of discounts when someone is really motivated. And their problem and solving that problem is more important than getting the maximum amount for that property. And
Sure.
1 in 3 sales fall through in the UK. And I don't know if anyone here sold a property before. I've sold a few. It's an absolute nightmare. It's not an enjoyable experience. When you sell, you think, thank God, it moves forward. You mentally spent the money. You've moved on. And a few months later, the sale falls through. You're back to square one. It's a nightmare. Someone comes in, and for some people, they're prepared to take less than the property's worth. There are some people unethical who will do things like they'll agree a price and they drop the price on the day of exchange. You don't need to do that stuff. You need to sleep well at night, knowing you're helping people, put some good karma out there. And when people send you Christmas cards and thank you and hug you because you've solved their problem, we know there's a way of ethically buying property below market value by helping them solve their problems.
Simon, that was absolutely brilliant. Thanks so much. And will you come back and join us again and tell us what's going on in the property market?
Absolutely, yeah. There's so many things we said we'd talk about, Derek, non-property we've not got around to. So yeah, happy to do that.
And do another magic trick, will you? One that perhaps I can learn. It needs to be a simpler one than that one.
I'll dig out my 8-year-old trick set and see what I can find for you there, Derek.
That would be great.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll do something that everyone can participate in. Maybe that would be good, right?
That would be brilliant.
I'll rack my brain and find something for you.
Simon, thanks for joining us. And I'd like ask members of Monday Night Live to give you the usual applause and vote of thanks.
Thank you for asking me. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll catch up with you in 6 months' time.
All the best.